I would like to introduce Kevin Haggerty to all of you. He is the chair of our Transportation, Land Use, and Housing Committee, and he is one who pulled this wonderful program together.
Thank you, Ann. We have a very interesting and informative program on State Route 37, its current situation, and the planning that's been going on to address roadway capacity and environmental issues that will need to be addressed as we plan for the future. In a minute, I'll introduce our four speakers. After their presentations, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. As Dee Dee just mentioned, there are two ways to do this. You can write your question using the chat box, or you can, if you want to ask the question yourself, put your name and put a question using the chat button, type your name in and type a question mark after your name, and I will call upon you with the given time available so you can ask the question. So we have four speakers today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one, and then I'll turn it over and they'll give the presentation, and then we'll follow it up with the Q&A. So our first speaker is Ann Richman. Ann is the executive director of the Transportation Authority of Marin, otherwise known as TAM. TAM is the transportation funding and planning agency for Marin County, as well as its transportation sales tax authority, and previously held positions at MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, and the Department of Transportation. She has a BA degree from the University of California, Berkeley, and a master's in public policy from Harvard's Kennedy's School of Government. Our second speaker will be Ricky Gao. Ricky has 14 years of experience working with the California Department of Transportation in various divisions, including construction design, planning and program project management. Ricky currently serves as the regional project manager for Napa County projects and the corridor management manager for State Highway 37. Ricky has a Bachelor of Arts degree in biology and a minor degree in computer sciences from Beretta College in Kentucky, and a Master of Science degree in civil engineering from the University of Texas in Austin. Our third speaker is Tammy Massengale. Tammy has worked with the state of California for 31 years, with 23 years at Caltrans. She currently serves as the environmental branch chief. In that role, she is responsible for the environmental compliance, that's the CEQA and NEPA assignment management, regulatory permitting and policy, environmental mitigation, course development and instruction, environmental project management, and statewide coastal programs, and the implementation of the statewide environmental database. Wow, that's quite a collection. Tammy currently is the co-lead for Highway 37 Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, which she'll talk about. Tammy holds a BA degree in history from the University of Northern Colorado. And our last speaker will be Jeanette Weisman. Jeanette has 20 years of experience in transportation planning, environmental compliance, and project management. Her work has focused on coastal environmental vulnerability in erosion and sea rise level. Jeanette currently serves as the state Route 37 corridor program manager. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Michigan and a Master of Sciences degree from California State University. That's quite a group of experts to help us with this subject today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ann Richman, and she'll start the discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Kevin, for that introduction, and Ann and everyone at League of Women Voters. Thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate this opportunity So I'm Ann Richman, the Executive Director of the Transportation Authority of Marin. Some of you are quite familiar with TAM, and we know the League of Women Voters was really involved in the 2018 reauthorization of our local sales tax. We thank you for your support and for your ongoing interest. Just a quick word about TAM. We have a variety of programs and projects, many of which are funded with these local funds, everything from local programs like Safe Routes to School and Crossing Guards, to grants for transit and local cities and towns, to major capital projects like the Marin Sonoma Narrows. And today's presentation is about a similar major project, not really similar, it's unique in many ways, State Route 37. This is a critical North Bay corridor. It faces numerous challenges, but also presents some really huge opportunities. For the last several years, the work on State Route 37 has really been a partnership between the counties of Marin, Sonoma, Napa, and Solano, as well as with Caltrans and MTC. There are a lot of important milestones coming up for this project in the next year, and we're glad to be here today to share with you that information and the upcoming work. So I'm going to turn it over first to Ricky Gao from Caltrans to start the presentation. As noted, Ricky and Tammy are here, as well as Jeanette from MTC. And I just wanted to quickly also mention TAM staff, Molly Graham, who's our public outreach coordinator, and Nick Nguyen, who is our State Route 37 program manager, are here as well. So thanks again to Kevin and to Ann and to everyone for the opportunity to be here today. So Ricky.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, Kevin, and thank you everyone from League of Women Voters. Let me share my screen in the presentation, and let me put it into the, hold on, let me redo this. I need to turn on the sound, make sure I have sound. Okay, share and enlarge the, 1 second. Can you all see the screen with full screen? I think it should be. All right, and thank you everyone, and thanks Anne for the introduction of the State Route 37 corridor program. And as Anne mentioned, this is a team effort with TAM, SCTA, NVTA, STA, as well as MTC and Caltrans. As the later a video will discuss, this is one corridor, one team, and many solutions. So we have presenters today, myself, Tammy, and Jeanette, and also we have Lydia Gaitan, who is one of the project managers from Caltrans here. So we will begin with the video to show the future of Highway 37, and then I will be introduce the State Route 37 corridor overview, and Tammy will talk about planning and the environmental linkage study, and Jeanette will discuss the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project, and I will talk about the flood reduction project, and then close with the question and answers. So without further ado, let's watch your video, The Future of Highway 37.
Hey, Ricky, while you get that set up, just to let you know, we
Highway
can see the
37.
slides, but not in presentation mode.
Oh, let me.
There's always something on Zoom. Thanks for bearing with us.
Okay. So let me switch it around. So on my end, I can see both in the presentation mode. Hold on. One more time. Here's the screen one, and it should be right now. Can you see the full screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank
Yes.
you.
All right. Thank you. Let me begin the video.
Is a critical piece of the Bay Area mobility puzzle. The 21-mile corridor connects Solano County cities and some of the most affordable housing in the Bay Area, with jobs in Napa, Marin, and Sonoma counties. Yet, the route is challenged by the issues of congestion, flooding, and sea level rise, as well as limited access for bikes or pedestrians. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, traffic flow on Highway 37 is routinely pinched by a 10-mile bottleneck. This stretch in particular, from Sears Point to Mare Island, one lane in each direction, separated by a concrete barrier, means westbound traffic backs up in the morning, adding up to 30 minutes to the typical commute and impacting Vallejo streets as drivers divert through Mare Island. In the evening, eastbound traffic backs up from Sears Point to beyond Lakeville Highway, adding as much as an hour and 20 minutes to commute times for some drivers, and extra safety problems for drivers who have diverted onto Lakeville Highway. There is no easy alternative to Highway 37. As you can see in these two existing options, drivers forced to detour north or south would have to travel twice as far to get from Vallejo to Novato or vice versa. A commitment to equity requires a reliable link between the comparatively affordable housing in Solano County and job markets to the west. And Highway 37 can be a viable route for future transit service only if buses can avoid congestion. The situation can be even worse in the winter. Existing levees protect the low-lying highway from everyday flooding, but heavy rains and king tides can shut down the entire highway, as happened for 28 days in 2017 and for 8 days in 2019 due to flooding at the Novato Creek crossing. Rising sea levels will require a permanent long-term solution, but the Highway 37 team already is working on short and intermediate term improvements to ease congestion and reduce flooding risk. On the Marin County end of the corridor, crews already have raised the pavement elevation, built concrete flood walls along critical segments of Novato Creek, installed new drainage systems, culverts, and slide gates, and acquired inflatable rubber bladders and portable pumps for deployment before major storms. Work set to begin soon includes more paving and repair work, mowing and weed abatement. The Highway 37 team is also looking at options for reducing congestion in the 10-mile bottleneck between Sears Point and Mare Island. These include a 3-lane highway with movable median barriers for a carpool lane that operates westbound in the morning and eastbound in the evening, and using the current shoulders for either part-time or full-time carpool lanes in each direction. It would take about 4 years and cost $250 to $400 million. Challenges include avoiding impacts on sensitive wetlands and minimizing the use of any bay fill. The other big issue, of course, is money. For both near-term improvements and congestion relief for the Mare Island to Sears Point segment, and a long-term project to completely transform Highway 37, tolls may be a practical solution that can serve as a match to secure other regional, state, and federal dollars. State Senator Bill Dodd, whose district includes nearly all of the Highway 37 corridor, in early 2022 introduced legislation that would authorize tolling on Highway 37 and would require toll discounts for high-occupancy vehicles and for lower-income drivers. What do you think are the right solutions for the Highway 37 puzzle? We look forward to hearing from you as we discuss the past, the present, and especially the future of Highway 37. One corridor, one team, many solutions. We're glad you are part of the team, and we welcome your ideas for solutions along Highway 37 and in the San Pablo Baylands.
Thank you. So the video mentioned a lot of challenges we having, which I'm going to mention in a second. But first, let's look at the State Route 37 corridor. This is a 21-mile corridor from US 101 all the way to I-80, ranging 4 North Bay counties, Marin, Sonoma, Napa, and Solano. From US 101 to SR 121, this is a segment with 4 lanes and 2 lanes on each side, and passing 121 towards east, going to Sonoma, passing Sonoma County and connecting to Mare Island. This is a narrow segment of US SR 37 with 2 lanes and 1 lane on each side. And passing Mare Island, going to Solano County, SR 37 became wider and a freeway with 2 lanes on each side. So this is the corridor overview. As also the video mentioned, there is not a good viable detour if 37 were to be closed. The travelers either have to go north and detour to Highway 116 to Highway 12, or going to south from I-580, passing the Richman and San Rafael Bridge, as you can see on the little insert on the upper right corner. So either alternatives route were adding more than twice of the length, which are not very viable. So the challenges on SR37, as the video mentioned, we have the flooding issue due to the low-lying segment. The red means really low, and I'm going to show this map later on once again. And we have the flooding issue back and close the State Route 37 in 2017 and 2019. And also we have congestion issue because of the low-income communities in Vallejo and a lot of working class traveling through SR37 to work in Marin, Novato area. So there's a very high volume of traffic in the peak period and causing congestions, as well as we have the ecological opportunities to restore some of the lands and adding connectivities to ecological site. And also lastly, we have the sea level rise issue. And this map, which I will show a bigger map, that is from BCDC and shows the areas will be flooded by 2100 because of the sea level rise. So we'll try to address all the challenges in a phased implementation, as you can see on this slide. First, the team will have identified several projects to deliver early benefits to restore SR37 in a better state from reduced flooding, and also have addressed the congestion relief, adding transit and carpool by Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project, SR 121 intersection improvements, and other smaller projects. And also we will identify ecological and Bay Trail enhancements. Once we have done all these near-term projects to deliver early benefits, then we restore SR37 in a better state to buy us some time until 2040 or the mid-21st century for SR37 ultimate project to deliver the advanced mitigation resilience to sea level rise and flooding, adding bike and pedestrian multimodal transit, and also address the public access and equity. So these are the 5 benefits the ultimate project which will deliver, and the ultimate project will come after the near-term project. So that's the phased implementation that the team is taking. So this map shows all the current projects and studies on SR37 from 6 Caltrans State Highway Operation and Protection Program, or the SHOP projects. And also we have the planning studies and as well as the MTC and the other North Bay County Transportation Authority sponsored projects on SR37. So I'm not going to go into the details of all the projects, but we'll mention about the major ones in the next few slides, specifically the flood reduction project, Sears Point to Mare Island project, and also planning and environmental linkage studies spanning across the entire corridor. So with that, I'm going to give it to Tammy to talk about planning and environmental linkage study.
Thank you, Ricky. Hello, everybody. The planning and environmental linkages study, go ahead and go to the next slide. Sorry about that, Ricky. The planning and environmental linkages study is a federal highway initiative, and it's used to bridge the gap that often occurs between planning and the environmental review process. Caltrans is also incorporating CEQA agencies into the Pell process, and I also wanted to let you know that Caltrans, in coordination with MTC and the 4 North Bay County Transportation Authorities, are completing the first Pell on the state highway system in California. So it's very exciting to be doing this for the first time in our state. The Pell study is considering the entire corridor with connections at 101 and all the way over to Interstate 80. There have been a lot of studies done, but they haven't encompassed the entire corridor. So that's what we're working on here. Next slide, please. Our Pell study will consider the ongoing projects in the corridor that Ricky mentioned, the numerous studies that have been previously completed for the corridor, and we will incorporate those studies as appropriate into the Pell study. And then the thing that is unique about the Pell study is it actually has an implementation plan, and that implementation plan will provide a framework for streamlining the transportation improvements, the funding that will be needed, and also identifying requirements for future CEQA and NEPA documentation. Next slide, please. One of the studies that I'd like to highlight is the MTC-sponsored Ultimate Sea Level Rise Design Alternatives Assessment from US 101 to State Route 121. This recently completed study looked at a range of alternatives on the western portion of the corridor, and using guidance from the Ocean Protection Council, they've designed the project to meet sea level rise for the year 2130, which is also the horizon year that we are looking at for the Pell. There were three alternatives that they looked at in the study. There was an elevated causeway, an embankment, and a combination of an embankment and the causeway. The team assessed the alternatives against 23 different criteria, and they used a lot of input from their environmental technical working group, the resource agencies, and stakeholders. And we, as the Pell team, will be pulling that information from the study and incorporating it where appropriate into our study. And just so that you know, that study was recently released and it is available on the resilient37.org website, which is here on your screen. Next slide, please. This schedule shows the work on the Pell that kicked off in December of 2020 and goes through October of 2021. In that time period, we identified the corridor setting and needs, established the various State Route 37 products and their relationship to the Pell, established an initial Pell purpose and need, held our first public meeting on May 26th of 2021, refined the purpose and need following input that we received from the public, from stakeholders and also agency representatives. And lastly, we have established evaluation criteria. As a side note, during this time, both the DAA and the Pell use the same purpose statement. So we work together collaboratively so that we would be looking at the same type of results, if you will. Next slide, please. Since October, our technical working groups have been refining the evaluation criteria. We have developed the alignments that we're going to show you in just a little bit. And on January 25th, we held our second public meeting where over 300 people attended. And of those attending, about 260 of them were from the traveling public, which was very exciting for us. Our next steps are to finalize the screening criteria and run the alignments through the screening process. Once we have completed this step, we're planning on holding a third public meeting in either late spring or early summer. Our plan is to have a final Pell report finalized in the fall. Next slide, please. As I noted on the past two slides, much of the initial work that we did in the beginning of the Pell study was focused on identifying the needs that would help us clearly demonstrate the issues that required action on the State Route 37 corridor. And as you can see, numerous needs were identified by our stakeholders in the public. These needs were used to develop the study's purpose statement. Next slide. The purpose statement was developed with public input and collaboration with a variety of stakeholders. The purpose statement is a set of objectives that will be used to meet a transportation deficiency. The purpose statement will remain consistent from planning throughout the project delivery process. The purpose statement for the Pell and the DAA study is preserving a critical regional transportation corridor that is resilient to extreme events while integrating ecological resiliency, which facilitates adaptation to sea level rise, providing reliable travel time and increasing average vehicle occupancy, providing safe mobility for bicyclists and pedestrians, maintaining and enhancing public access, including to recreational areas. Lastly, providing equitable transit and multimodal transportation solutions that improve access for and provides meaningful benefits to all users of State Route 37, with a special consideration of underserved communities. Next slide, please. On your screen is a map of the preliminary alternatives our team is examining to be considered in the State Route 37 Pell study. We used prior studies and input from the technical working groups to develop these preliminary alternatives. And before I go over these, I wanted to let you know that we have 3 technical working groups that are helping support the Pell. We have a design technical working group, an environmental technical working group, and also a traffic technical working group. So alignment 1, which is shown with the red line, starts at the existing 101-37 interchange and follows the route to State Route 21. It goes north, and then a new roadway adjacent to the SMART rail line would go east. It would terminate at 29, and folks would have an option of either going north to 12 or south to the existing 37, where they could adjoin Interstate 80. Alignment 2, shown with an orange line, starts at 101 south of Burdell, where a new roadway will go to State Route 21 and follow the same route as Alternative 1. Alignment 3, shown with the green line, starts at 101 near San Antonio Road, where a new roadway will go to State Route 116, follows 116 to 121, and then follow the same route as Alternatives 1 and 2. Alignment number 4, shown with a purple line, starts at the existing 101-116 interchange and follows State Route 116 to State Route 121, and then follows the same route as the previous alignments. Alignment 5, shown with the dark blue line, runs along the existing State Route 37 corridor and would either be on an embankment fill, an elevated structure, or a combination of both, which we also term a hybrid. Alignment 6, which is shown with the brown line, runs along the existing State Route 37 corridor and is protected in place by a new or enhanced levee system with some floodgates. This alternative assumes that the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project is completed. And if that's new to you, Jeanette's going to talk about that in just a little bit. Alignment number 7, shown with the purple line, begins at US 101 State Route 37 interchange and connects directly to the Napa River Bridge's west approach. Another north-south elevated structure coming from State Route 37 and the State Route 121 intersection would extend approximately 3 miles south to connect by an interchange at the middle of the alignment. And then alignment 8, which is at the top of your map, shown with a light blue line, follows State Routes 116 and 12 from State Route 101 to Interstate 80. All of these alignments will include safe bicycle and pedestrian facilities as directed by Caltrans policies. Next slide, please. During the technical working group meetings, there was a lot of discussion regarding Alignment 7. The main theme was the feasibility of building this type of structure over the bay. Since the alignment meets the purpose and need, it will be retained through the screening criteria 1. Next slide, please. As part of the discussion on Alignment 7, the recommendation was to add a new alignment to the current list that is exclusively over the bay crossing. This idea had a lot of support since it would be the most direct route between Vallejo and Novato. Gosh, I'm having a hard time with my words. In addition, it would reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled, focus on equity, and would be the most direct route for bus service and SMART. The con of this alignment is the access to State Route 121 and Sears Point. Next slide, please. This graphic shows the 9 alignments that were considered during the level 1 screening process. Next slide, please. The alignments just discussed were screened using 10 criteria that directly tied to the purpose statement. The recommendations of the screening criteria were to eliminate alignments 2 through 8, consolidate alignments 5 and 6, and add alignment 9, shown in yellow, that will originate at State Route 101-37 and connect to the Napa River Bridge West approach, as I just mentioned. Following the March technical working group meetings, alignment 8 will be retained and moved to level 2 screening. And the reason for that is we had a lot of input from our resource agencies asking us to look at an alignment that completely gets out of the wetlands. And alignment 8 is the only one that does that. So with that being said, alignments 1, 4, the combination 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 will move to level 2 screening. Next slide, please. Okay, these are some of the additional modes that Caltrans will consider to be part of the various alignments. Many of these modes would have the potential to increase person throughput, such as buses and rail. In addition, you will see that both floating bridges and ferries have been crossed out. These 2 modes were eliminated during the level 1 screening process. I will turn it over to Jeanette to discuss the Sears Point Tamara Island Improvement Project.
All right, thank you. Okay, next slide. All right, so as previously noted by Ricky and in the video shown earlier, we are moving forward the State Route 37 Sears Point Tamara Island Improvement Project, which is shown here in blue, extending from State Route 121 in the west, east to Tamara Island in the east. And this is the area where, as previously noted, State Route 37 drops from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction. And as a result, there's substantial congestion during particularly the commute periods in the commute direction, but also during events. So this project aims to address that by providing the benefits of transit in the corridor where it currently is non-existent. So the project proposes to implement transit and also to more generally prioritize high occupancy vehicles with the goal of ultimately providing greater travel time, reliability, better flow of people, vehicles, and freight through this corridor. But I'll also note that this project is needed in order to support sections of the roadway that are currently settling and are at risk to flooding as a result of that. And it's also a means of moving us forward to the ultimate sea level rise adaptation project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So we are currently in the environmental phase of the project. We had a draft environmental document that was circulated this past January and February for comment. And now we are moving towards a final environmental document targeted for this late summer, early fall, and looking at a September final document, if possible, of this year. And then we'll be moving to the final design and permitting stage for the project, and then into construction, hopefully in 2025, with the goal of opening the section, or reopening the section of the highway with the improvements by 2026. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that shows the alternatives that we circulated as part of the draft environmental document in January and February. That was environmental impact report and environmental assessment. And so the project aims to make the previously stated benefits, the improvements to travel times and to be able to successfully implement transit by adding an HOV lane. And so the three alternatives that were considered as part of our draft environmental document are showed here. Alternative one is a movable barrier scenario with the HOV lane moving and changing directions based on the peak commute direction. So such that it would be 2 lanes in the direction of peak travel that would be AM going west and in the afternoon going east on State Route 37. Alternative 2 is a part-time HOV lane use of the shoulder, and that would be the shoulder in the direction of the peak traffic flows would be used for commuting, and that would be a 2-lane, and the other direction would just be a shoulder. And then the last alternative is 4 lanes. It would be 2 in each direction. That'd be open at all times, but they would be, the HOV would be in use during the commute hours, commute direction. So those are the different ways that we've been evaluating in order to bring forth those benefits. And as always, we're balancing impacts to benefits and taking in public comment on that, and now moving that in our final analysis. And I want to note that all of these scenarios include tolling as a means of prioritizing high occupancy vehicles and also paying for this project's benefits as well as the future benefits to move forward the ultimate sea level rise adaptation project to get us through that designing process and putting money towards that effort. And then they all would include, this project will include transit, money for transit implementation and operation. And I'll tell you more about that in the next slide. So this is an overview with a lot of information around the draft transit plan that we are developing with STA, Solano Transportation Authority, as the lead to establish bus transit along State Route 37. And noting that we have a lot of transit dependent users along this corridor, particularly coming from Solano County, but not exclusively, and also recognize that there is a big desire for reducing greenhouse gases and trying to use transportation where possible. So we're also looking at the ways that the commute is viable and is practical to people. And so there's a series of different elements shown here, which include mobility hubs, which enable transit connections, looking at park and ride lots and opportunities where you can get to the transit and then park your vehicle or then join up as part of ride shares, van pools, or carpooling, and recognizing the importance of the first and last mile in connecting to State Route 37 and also to your destination. So we have some programs that are in place that we will be tying into this that offer discounts for those first and last mile connections, and also have an existing guaranteed emergency ride home option for people to utilize where their schedules change and they need to be able to make sure they can get back in instances of emergencies and other purposes, so that we make the commute a viable option for those that need or want to take it. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to Ricky. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. So I'm going to discuss the flood reduction project. So the project is located between US 101 and SR 121. And the proposal of this project is to provide interim solutions on SR 37 to address flooding until another project to provide a permanent and long-term solutions. And please note that as the project develops, most likely this project will be leaning towards to address the flooding to the most vulnerable segment of the State Route 37 in Marin County, where the historical flooding happened in 2017 and 2019. And this map shows the elevation of SR 37, where red and orange means really low elevation can go as low as 2 feet, and versus yellow or green is much higher elevation, can go up to 20 feet. So as you can see, the red, oranges are mostly in Marin and some part in Sonoma, and also we have the yellow off 37, and these are the levees protecting 37 and also the communities around. And also, if you can see, there's a line towards east of SR 121. There is no levee around 37 because 37 is in much higher elevation and itself acts as a levee. That's why there's no additional levee protects 37. So because of the low line elevation, especially in Marin, we had flooding and closed 37 in 2017 when there was a historical rain event during the winter, and the levee, we have levee bridge and flooded SR 37, closed the roadway 28 days as the video mentioned. And here are some pictures taken from 2017. And similarly, in 2019, there was another historical event caused the levee bridge and overtopping the levee, and SR 37 was closed for 8 days in 2019. And because of that, Caltrans partnered with local agencies, did quite a few improvements and with the emergency project to raise pavement, restore levees, construct flood walls, and added drainage improvements in both 17 and 2019. And these improvements are quite beneficial. And so far, we have not had the flooding since 2019. However, the emergency projects are band-aid, and we still need a project systematically addressing the flooding and sea level rise. That's why we are studying the flood reduction projects. The flood reduction project began its environmental studies in summer of 2021, and a scoping meeting was held in November of last year, and there were a lot of good comments were collected from public as well as resource agencies. Currently, the project development team is studying the alternatives, and we are preparing draft environmental document circulation in fall of 2022, and target to complete environmental phase in 2023, and complete design in 26, and begin construction in 2027. And design and construction target are pending on funding availability. So the range of alternatives has been updated a few times based on the comments received. Currently, the team is looking at these alternatives, including replacing Novato Creek Bridge. This is a phased approach. In case money or the funding is limited, we will first replace the Novato Creek Bridge and then complete other improvements. And that's why this approach is included in all alternatives, which is, I'm talking about replacing Novato Creek Bridge. And also the team is considering and studying the causeway to raise the 37 in a much higher elevation. And also we are studying combination of causeway and embankment. And lastly, we are also looking at innovative methods such as the passive flood barrier, which is a barrier system normally lay flat, and bicycle and pedestrian can walk on top of it. And when flood or the water reaches 37 and these barriers the gravity of the water will trigger the leveler system and erect the barrier to prevent the roadway from flooding. So this method has been used in other places in Europe and other parts of the United States, and we are considering it as an innovation. So that's the flood reduction project. And also we have two websites. One is resilient37.org. Another one is SR37corridorprojects.com. And both websites has a lot of information regarding SR37 studies and projects and programs. And also it has event information as well as the records from past event and meetings. So please do check them out. And you can also have ways to leave comment through both websites. So with that, we are open to any questions.
Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, the other speakers. So I want to remind people that if you have questions, you can either type them in the chat or put your name and a question mark in the chat, and I will call you. But let me open up by, and I don't know, whoever wants to take this, can someone talk about the volumes of traffic that are on the road right now and what those volumes are expected to be in 10, 20, 30 years? And it may not just be, the need for people, it's the number of people that need to commute either to Marin or back to Solano. We have a taker here.
I can respond to that a little bit. I think I can't give you what today's numbers are, and I can't really give you much of what the future looks like. We are in the process of starting our traffic analysis for the future demand on the corridor. And our consultant is saying they'll take us about 5 to 6 weeks to finish up. So when we have our public meeting in the summer, we definitely will be releasing that information.
I can add on, we have our analysis that's included in the draft environmental document that indicated that there would be an increase in traffic volume that's anticipated. And we looked at, I think, 2025 and then 2045. And when we were looking at the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project, our findings were that by including tolling and high occupancy vehicle prioritization, we would be reducing that volume and vehicle miles traveled with implementation of the project with that feature. So that is maybe some additional input that I would tack on.
Okay, thank you. We had a question from Steve Furlbow. The state rail plan calls for service on Highway 37 connector corridor by 2040. How does this plan deal with that?
Hi, Steve. Thank you for the question. We are working collaboratively with SMART on how we can use the same corridor where feasible. They were a huge proponent of that alternative 9 that we added that went from the 101-37 all the way over to Mare Island, because that would make it easier for them to construct. They're very interested in having a connection over to the Vallejo side of the bay. And that would definitely help them. We haven't made any decisions yet, but they are part of our stakeholder working group and part of our technical working groups, and they definitely participate and provide us good recommendations.
Okay, thank you. A question about, I didn't hear any discussion today about it, but I've heard that the solution is going to be very expensive. And one of the opportunities would be to construct a toll road to help, to pay for the cost or to help subsidize the cost. When you do something like that, there's an equity issue. So is the study and the plan, will the study or plan address the equity issue? Equity in terms of people's ability to pay. I mean, one of the reasons that people commute from outside the county is because the cost of housing is so expensive in Marin, they need to live in other counties.
Yeah, so I'll start off with that. So thank you for bringing that up. I probably should have stated that outright, that tolling would be introduced with means-based discounts. So that's a really critical part of the legislation. And that there's also discounts that would be included for HOV users, but that means-based low-income discount is a critical component to address that. And I think another piece of that for consideration is that by implementing and enabling transit to work, and there will be discounts on transit for low-income users as well, we give an opportunity to access State Route 37 in a way that's not currently available, that isn't in and of itself a discount to those eligible users.
Thank you. I see Rick Ludman has a question. Rick, you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I'm Rick Lutman. I live in Roanoke Park, and I'm part of the Sonoma League of Women Voters. I'm also a regular participant with the Friends of SMART. I've been to probably a dozen meetings already in the last year on Highway 37. And generally speaking, somebody, maybe several somebodies bring up the rail alternative. And there's a certain lip service paid to it, but we never hear any details. And this is very frustrating to me because there is a viable railroad track between Novato and Suisun, where there's a connection with the National Rail Network. It's owned by SMART between Novato and the Napa River Bridge. It's in use now for freight, which is brought in from Suisun and goes up to Petaluma. I see that as a viable alternative to get people who live in the relatively more affordable areas of American Canyon and Vallejo to the jobs that they have in Marin. And it's one that it seems to me could be done relatively cheaply compared to these other plans that are being talked about, and relatively soon, which is important for the people that are stuck in the congestion. I mean, today, they're stuck in congestion. And as was noted, this can add an hour to a commute. They don't want to wait till 2029. They need relief now. It seems to me that within a short time and with a relatively little cost, commute service could be established between the lower Napa Valley and Novato, in conjunction perhaps with transit service, bus transit, basically in the Napa and Solano area. I really would like to hear some more serious discussion about this. If it really is unfeasible, I'd like to hear why. Otherwise, why aren't Caltrans and MTC talking about this? Thank you.
Can someone respond to that?
I can add just a couple of bits that I'm aware of that we have been working very closely with SMART. They are looking at taking that freight line and converting it to passenger rail, which would be great and would help with the traffic levels on 37. The one thing that's important, I think, that we sometimes forget is that a lot of the folks that commute from Vallejo over to the Novato area are service folks, and they can't take all of their equipment and everything on a bus or on a train. So we still have to have some type of a highway system for those folks to use. And And so we are working with SMART and, we have ideas of things that'll work, but we don't have anything finalized yet. We're in the very, very beginning phases. So I can't really answer your question as fully as I would like to.
Okay, thank you. Doug Cooper had a comment or question. To what extent are you expecting and planning for traffic that now uses other routes or totally avoids crossing the bay will turn to using Highway 37 as congestion relief is attempted? And so return the congestion to the discussion point.
Right, so maybe I can start off with that. That's why tolling is an important component of the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project. It allows us to better manage that use and really prioritize and encourage high occupancy vehicles and transit through the corridor and through this important section of the corridor. So we've done an analysis of projected traffic volumes, and we are not getting that outcome with the inclusion of tolling. If we were to exclude it, we would anticipate additional vehicles and vehicle miles traveled.
Okay, other comments on that? Jeanette, in your presentation, you showed some diagrams of different lane configurations using the shoulder. In those diagrams, I didn't see any accommodation for bikes or pedestrians.
Sure, I can speak to that. So we are constrained, by the bay, obviously, with the existing alignment configuration of State Route 37. So all of those alignments that you saw were designed to try and minimize the widening of the roadway prism or just the roadway itself. And so we continue in the project planning to accommodate for bike and pedestrians as part of the project, but the amount of that accommodation did vary depending on the alternative. And so the narrowest shoulder alternative was a 4-foot. That was alternative 2, and then there was a variation of alternative 3 that was a 4-foot shoulder. So that would be the narrowest accommodation for bike and potentially bike and pedestrians. There were some nuances and constraints to that. They would probably require prohibitions if we were to have followed up with that, given safety constraints. And that's something that the project team had thought through and have been considering. But the other alternatives, alternative 1 and alternative 3, are 8-foot shoulders. We recognize that it would be better if we had the space to have a separated barrier, and that doesn't, there's really not space for that in this current roadway and the adjacent environmentally sensitive habitats of the baylands and the bay itself. So we're really looking at providing substantial bike and pedestrian access as part of the ultimate sea level rise and adaptation project. And as part of that project, we've already begun planning for that really robust public access. And we've done that through a number of documents. Some of you guys may be familiar with the Grand Bayway, which looked at a couple of years ago how we can both in the interim try and connect the Bay Trail gap closures so people can use that area recreational and to the degree it's possible for areas of through transit. And then also looking at coming up with a separated bike pedestrian facility that we can implement as part of the ultimate project. So those are the ways that we're moving forward with really the robust bike and pedestrian facility improvements that we're looking for along State Route 37. I will add we will be making public access improvements as part of the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project. And that will be through funding improvements to the Bay Trail. That is our intention and our proposal and our current collaborations with the partnering agencies. And we are talking with Sonoma County Regional Parks about their Sears Point connector, where we see a really important and valued improvement by connecting approximately 9 miles of Bay Trail in that area that currently does not connect over Tole Creek. So that's something we've heard from the bike community, from the public, and that we will be looking to figure out if we can support. There's also opportunities in Solano to address the Solano County constituents' interests for their public access. So we are trying to address it, and we have different opportunities in the near and long term.
And also I want to add to what Jeanette said, for the Sears Point to Mare Island project, for the alternatives that have a much narrower shoulder, or the point where there is narrow shoulder for bike and pedestrians, we are adding safety measures to ensure maximum accessibility for bicycle and the pedestrians could be used at those narrower points.
That's a great point. And you remind me, Ricky, thank you for making that point, that, transit will enable bicyclists to get across that area more safely than we can otherwise enable in the interim with bike racks that people can use.
Can someone talk about the not economic, but environmental advantages and disadvantages of a raised embankment versus a raised causeway?
For the raised embankment, the disadvantages are very, what I heard and what I know is, since much of the vicinity of 37 is on top of the bay mud, to raise the 37 on the embankment above 6 feet elevation or higher elevation, that requires deep soil mixing to prevent roadway from settling. And the deep soil mixing is something that resource agency and the environmental group does not want to see, because it's permanent impact and it's very difficult to remove in the future. For the causeway, which does not require deep soil mixing, and the causeway will have much greater connectivity underneath for the wetlands and other environmental areas. And the disadvantage of the causeway obviously is a much higher cost. And also, if for the near-term project, we choose the causeway, and once we determine the ultimate project on a different alignment, the causeway will be a throwaway, and that's the disadvantage for the causeway. So both has disadvantage and advantages, causeway versus embankment.
So I had a question or a comment. Sally Pennypacker asked a question. So you've talked about all these studies that are going on. So how are you hoping to, when will these studies be concluded, and when are you hoping to finish the studies and to be able to make a determination on a final project? Can you do it by 2050?
That's the hope. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have near-term projects to deliver early benefits, and these near-term projects should complete and finish construction or goes to construction we are hoping by 2026, 2027, and that will restore 37 in a much better stage and buys us time to study the ultimate project. And the ultimate project, which Tammy discussed, the planning and environmental study, is the early stage to get to the ultimate project. And after completion of PEL, we'll move into environmental PAED phase, environmental phase, and design phase. And it depends on the PEL outcome. It could be one project or multiple projects. And the goal is to finish by 2050 to restore 37 corridor entirely. And obviously that depends on the funding availability that all the partner agencies, the entire team is also working on at the same time.
Okay, Kate Powers had a question.
Thank you, Kevin. My question is about how the planning for the interim projects and the shop projects are being integrated with the PEL project. My original understanding was that the PEL project was going to somehow inform the studies that occurred during the DAA funding of MTC funded process, that those studies would not only provide information for the interim projects that are being designed now, but also inform the PEL project. And with consideration that the purpose, part of the purpose of the PEL is to integrate ecological resilience. And just wondering how the costs are calculated, because it seems like the costs involved in the interim project should consider the long-term costs of not integrating, not being integrated with the PEL ultimate project final solution. So Mr. Gao, you mentioned the deep soil mixing. If that were to be calculated, and the removal of that, the costs, from my understanding, for the long-term viability of the project, that the causeway would be a better value. And so, I'm sorry, I'm not saying this well, but I'm just looking for the best use of public dollars now, integrating the purpose of not just scoping it as a transportation project, but being able to include ecological resiliency and the support of the projects that have already been underway there. And how do you plan, when you're estimating costs, the overall benefit to the public in terms of best use of dollars?
And thank you, Kate. That's a great question. And when we're planning all the interim, the near-term projects, and specifically the flood reduction project, the cost is definitely a big consideration. For the causeway versus an embankment, that is, we do consider the cost, and as I mentioned in other meetings, we will also use the PEL study result to guide us further to choose which alternatives. And we also heard from many folks raise the concerns of embankment from various of meetings and settings. And as noted in my in my presentation today, we are considering other alternatives, as including the causeway and the combination of causeway and embankment, and moved the complete the full embankment option to consider but rejected because of the comments that received.
I want to add something to this as well. I mean, this the consideration of kind of long-term and short-term costs is really important to all of us agencies as well. And, we certainly want to do things in the near term that are going to be helpful in the right time frame while the ultimate project is being developed. But we also want to make sure that those improvements are as efficient as possible and that we're not creating something that will be, an obstacle or sort of won't be helpful in the long term or won't create benefits, won't allow for the benefits of the ultimate project in the long term as well. So Kate, I think, we're all concerned about using the public dollars wisely, and the investments in this corridor are going to be large in the long term. I mean, the ultimate project is potentially very, very pricey. Not that it won't yield benefits, but it's a 20-mile corridor. So we know that it will take some significant funding to build a resilient corridor for the year 2130. And we are all mindful of that responsibility of using the public dollars wisely.
Okay, we have time for just a couple quick questions. As Steve Birnbaugh asked, if you remove the bottleneck between Mayor Island and Sears Point, what effect will that have on the morning commute at the Highway 101 interchange?
Figure this falls to me. However, I don't have a specific answer offhand. Maybe that's something we could follow up on. I know that's something that we've looked at and that there may be some small effects, hopefully fairly minor. So I apologize, Steve, I don't have anything more specific at this time. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Okay, and then the last question, which is one of mine, is this has been very interesting. How can, and I want to remind people that we've put some links in the chat box about the project, but as a citizen who is very interested in this project, what's the best way for us to continue to learn about the project, to be aware of public meetings that are coming up and be given a chance to comment on this project?
On the state SR37 corridor project.com, and there is a what's new section, and it lists all the upcoming projects and events. And also, if you go to the event button on this website, it also has the upcoming events. We periodically add more upcoming events to those to the website, so that anyone can see what's coming up and what is also an ongoing, such as the public commenting period.
And I want to add to that, if you don't mind, that we do also have approximately quarterly policy committee meetings. So that is the group of the North Bay elected officials supporting the State Route 37 programming, and we go to them and present what's happening, what we're planning, and it's open to the public. So I think that's a fantastic opportunity to track what's happening and provide feedback and commentary. Our next policy committee meeting is June 2nd, and that will be posted on that with information on the Resilient 37 SCTA's website. So that's another good resource.
Well, great.
And if I can just add, I'm sorry, Kevin, if I
Sure,
can
go
just
ahead.
add real quickly, we have over 500 individuals and groups that we have on our mailing list for the Pell. I will check and see if we have the League of Women Voters in the 4 counties. If we don't, I will make sure and add them. Okay.
Thank you. So on behalf of the League, I want to thank Ann, Ricky, Tammy, and Jeanette for their helping the presentation today. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Molly Graham, who's the communication person for TAM, to help me put this program together. So with that, I want to again thank the audience for coming. I hope you've learned something. I know I have. And we'll continue, the League will continue to monitor this program, and hopefully we'll have another member meeting program so we can update you on what's happened since now. So with that, I'll conclude the meeting.
I just.
Oh, I
Kevin,
need
just wanna
to go
thank-
back to Ann. I'm sorry. Ann Wakely.
Just want to thank our speakers so much. This was really important information for us to have. And we truly appreciate you taking the time to put this together and come talk to us. And thank you to everyone who came today. I hope you all learned something, as Kevin said. I certainly did. I always do. Every time I hear about these things, I learn a little bit more, a lot more. And it's so important. So thank you all. And